Hello friends, hope you are well. Well, it looks like things have escalated. The war is on. Who will win? A multi-billion dollar internet search engine powerhouse that with the flick of the switch can change the course of history? Or a Commonwealth statutory authority of a little island with 25 million people whose role is to enforce the Competition and Consumer Act of 2010 and a range of additional legislations promoting competition, fair trading and regulating national infrastructure for the benefit of all its citizens? Google sent out a warning to all Australian people about the ACCC's Draft News Media and Digital Platform Mandatory Bargaining Code. So let's discuss. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, I want to set the stage with a bit of background and context. Google Australia's accounts show its local revenue last year was $1.24 billion. The company got a tax bill of $58.7 million last year, but it also recorded an adjustment for tax in previous years that cost it an additional $50.6 million. Australia's corporate tax is 30% if you turn over more than $50 million, which would mean Google's tax bill should be around $420 million. But hey, who's counting, right? If you remember, BHP lost in the High Court against the ATO and now has a $125 million tax bill. Did this set a precedence? Doesn't seem like it did. Google's lucrative advertising revenue still gets booked offshore in Singapore under Google Asia Pacific. They tout its local arm merely facilitates the sale of advertising between an advertiser and Google Asia Pacific. Next time there's a drug dealer on the street, maybe he'll just be facilitating the sale of drugs from its supplier and shouldn't get taxed or maybe get booked by the cops. Now in 2018, Google recorded total revenue of $1.07 billion for the year to December 31st, including $560.6 million of advertising and other reseller revenue. It reported a pre-tax profit of just $155.9 million. The company has $49.1 million in tax payable, but a $681,000 adjustment for prior years and $21.9 million detriment meant Google only paid $26.5 million in tax that year. The ATO is still fighting Google and paying their fair share of tax to this day. Now overseas in July, the French Senate approved a 3% levy that will apply to revenue from digital services earned in France by companies with more than 25 million euros revenue in France and 750 million euros worldwide. The tax, widely referred to as the GAFA tax, which stands for Google, Apple, Facebook and Amazon, was expected by France's finance minister to raise 500 million euros a year. So France's unilateral move invited strong backlash from the US, with President Donald Trump threatening America would retaliate by imposing tariffs on French wine. So to Google, I say, hey Google, start paying tax, then we will talk. But let's start on the events today. I was thinking I would read out Google's open letter to you, but it's plastered everywhere online. So links below for the full thing. However, in a summary, we have these points. The News Media Bargaining Code would force Google to provide you with a dramatically worse Google search and YouTube experience. The law would force Google to give an unfair advantage to one group of businesses, news media businesses, over everyone else who has a website, YouTube channel, or small business. Apparently, you trust Google with your data and their job is to keep it safe. Under this law, Google has to tell news media businesses how they can gain access to data about your use of their products. Google will do everything they possibly can to get this proposal changed so they can protect how search and YouTube work for you in Australia. This was an excerpt from the letter by Mel Silver, Managing Director on behalf of Google Australia. So to that I say, hey Google, how have you been enjoying making billions of Australians and worldwide news media content? It's not technically fair use, is it? So here comes the ACCC. Let's look at what this legislation is trying to do. The draft code would allow news media businesses to bargain individually or collectively with Google and Facebook over payment for the inclusion of news on their services. The code also includes a set of minimum standards for the treatment of news digital platform services, addressing issues such as providing advance notice of changes to algorithmic ranking and presentation of news, appropriately recognizing original news content, and providing information about how and when Google and Facebook make available user data collected through user interaction with news content. By default, arbitration under the draft code would only consider the inclusion of news on the following digital platform services. On the Facebook platform, it's the Facebook news feed, including Facebook groups and Facebook pages, Instagram, and the Facebook News tab when it actually launches in Australia. Then on Google, it's Google Search, Google News, and Google Discover. These services have been selected on the basis that they display Australian news without typically offering revenue sharing arrangements to all news media businesses that produce this content. Now, there are a couple of rules to participate. So under this draft, news media businesses wishing to participate would apply to the ACMA. Then the news media business would nominate which of their news sources they would like to include in the code. Those can include news websites, newspapers, and other print publications, television programs, radio programs, and other audio or video content made available online. Finally, the news media businesses can participate in the code if they produce core news and publish this online. The draft code defines core news as journalism on publicly significant issues, journalism that engages Australia in public debate and informs democratic decision-making, and journalism relating to community and local events. Some example of this kind of journalism are political reporting, court and crime reporting. Then they have to adhere to appropriate professional editorial standards, and they have to maintain editorial independence from the subject of their news coverage. You see, news sources are also unlikely to meet this test if they are owned or controlled by a political advocacy organization, such as a political party or union. Then they also must operate primarily in Australia for the purposes of serving Australian audiences. In addition to the criteria above, an eligible news media business's annual revenue must exceed $150,000 in either the most recent financial year or in 3 out of the 5 most recent financial year. And I bet you're starting to click as to why this is not a good thing. But what does this all mean? Well, media outlets in Australia would be able to monetize or negotiate deals for their content to be chargeable directly and not have their content cloned or shared and used to monetize a third-party platform, for example, Google and Facebook, for just sharing. So, for example, if I go to Facebook to find my news, click a story or link, even though I end up on the Guardian's website, Facebook has already loaded ads to me before I get there, and they make money off the back of this Guardian article. Now, what about the other side of this example? Would the Guardian get my click without Facebook serving me the article? Good question. Well, let's look at Spain. Remember when the letter said Google will do everything they possibly can to get this proposal changed so we can protect how search and YouTube work for you in Australia? The Spanish government introduced a link tax, which led to Google pulling its news product from the country altogether in 2014. They certainly did everything. This move caused media revenue to plummet because guess what? Google just stopped indexing news articles and of course stopped showing them in search results. Then we have another caveat from the ACCC this time. The only news outlets that can take this path are those with money. So this could very well destroy smaller media outlets and then concentrate viewership on the big media companies such as News Corp due to their reach. Technically speaking, my little dirt report on Sundays would sink like the little dinghy it is, but that's not my career. So think more of your local news sources and independent journalists who are on the road doing it hard and don't make $150K a year. There are more issues. These data collectors may be obligated to give large news publishers confidential information about what you read, when you read it, how you read it, and potentially they will turn it to use information to sway elections. I mean, it's a big jump, but certainly not out of the question. But let's be real, this is about money. More than giving you a great search engine, more than protecting your data. The ACCC is certainly punching up, and that's admirable, but Google can punch down so hard, the media in this country won't ever recover. How would this boring dystopia affect you? Well, you would only be exposed to big news outlets, pretty much News Corp and a few others, because outlets like SBS and ABC are not even entitled to this scheme as they are government funded. Whatever you may think of them, drowning out their voices is not democratic. However, Google Search, YouTube, Facebook, all aggregates of news, and they say they are impartial, but they are not. They still feed the news and they deem it correct, they share it, and hide the stuff they don't agree with, and so choose your own evil, I guess. I want to make it clear that Google shapes its results to fit in with their products and their advertisers and their own agenda. They can talk all they want about being impartial, but they don't get this big without working for yourself. A great example is YouTube's trending page. The top 10 is filled with old media garbage. Late night show hosts talking trash, celebrities being trash, and other generic paid for crap. They make money for Google and they get a podium. So, is this bill actually going to help anyone, or will it cause more problems? I believe in its current state, this will hurt the Australian media news landscape more than it will help. It will decimate smaller publishers and independent content creators. And to be clear, Google is not the savior of free internet, nor a defender of your privacy. They are far from it, and they're willing to do anything to keep their power and control. As much as I hate to say it, this bill will not help. And while Google used language I don't necessarily agree with in their letter, and many things they say are a bit ridiculous, on a technicality they are right. This will not help Australia, and we do not need another raw deal like this. Let me know below your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Maybe like this video and subscribe, or even share this video if you can, because if this bill passes, it's unlikely my video will ever be found. Kind of like the second page of Google results. Thanks for watching, and bye!